Hello, Charlie, and welcome back to Rock and Roll English.
Hello, Martin. Thank you very much for having me. Lovely to be back.
A pleasure as always. And obviously, we need to mention married man now. How is married life?
Yeah, married man. Got a ring on my finger. It's pretty similar to the last 10 years of our lives together. But there's a certain comfort to it, a certain nice, warm, fuzzy feeling that we had for about 3 weeks. And then we had to move flats, and that was a bit stressful. So it kind of burst the bubble.
Yeah, I can imagine. But warm, fuzzy feeling. I agree. That is there. That, when I got married, I think was when I felt like a grown-up for the first time. I kind of thought,
Yes.
I am now officially a grown-up.
Yes. I think that helped me feel a bit more mature as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Can I just ask, how are you?
Always fantastic. Always fantastic. I like to tell people that, but the reality is surviving with 2 very young children.
Yeah. How's that going?
Best not get into that. Although I did go to the gym for the very first time in more or less a year. Actually, yesterday and today as well. So 2 days in a row. And I'm starting to feel like a human again, which is good.
Getting the burn. Nice. Kind of any kind of specific exercise that you're doing?
Not really. Lots of just jumping up and down. I go to the classes because that way I've realised I like to be told what to do. Because if I go to the gym, I have to decide, right, am I going to use this weight? Am I going to do this? But if I go to a class, it's do this, do this, do this. The embarrassing thing is because I have to go at 6:30 in the morning. Oof. And because it's the only time of the day where children are still sleeping and not trying to kill me. So I go really early in the morning, and there are specific classes at that time. So started yesterday with, what's it called? Legs, bums and tums. So
Were you the only guy?
I can confirm I was the only guy. And this isn't even before I went to this class, and it even happened again. The instructor, at one point, he's trying to motivate everyone, and he just said, "Come on, girls." And then I noticed it, but I thought, don't say it. And then he said, "Oh, sorry," to me, and like made a big thing of it. "Oh, sorry, it's normally just women." I was just like, oh, for God's sake.
That's really, really funny. Legs, bums and tums, that is traditionally for females, but we can't be that sexist, can we?
Exactly. Okay, let's 2023. Okay, so legs, bums and tums is all right for men too.
Yeah, but I do agree about the classes. It's taken me 10 years to realise that. It really helps, that social pressure of not giving up on like a plank or something for 30 to 60 seconds when people are around you are much more likely to try a bit more.
And you have a specific time to be there. And if you don't go to the class, you get an email from the gym saying you get 3 strikes and you're out. Oof. So you have to go to the class. So I like that. But one thing I wanted to mention, actually, when you mentioned about being married and you showed me your ring, how are you getting on with the ring? Because that took me a long time. It took, in fact, until my daughter was born, I actually never wore my wedding ring.
Oh, really?
Because I would sometimes wear it going out, but I just kept forgetting to put it on. And because I had never worn a ring in my life, and it was a really weird thing to start doing.
I'm very interested to understand what the relationship between having your first child and putting your ring on was. Was that something?
Because in Italy, where our first child was born, you have to stay there for 3 days in the hospital. So I put it on before I left, and I just kept it on, because normally I would always put it on, go out, take it off, come back. But because I was in hospital for 3 days, obviously you're not going to take it off in hospital, you might lose it. So I kept it on, and then I had it on for 3 days solid for the first time, and then just thought, right, well, I'll just keep it on now.
Right. Okay. I thought it might be something to do with, you're with a child and you feel like you want to be identified as the father, and maybe your traditional mind is like, oh, well, I've got to show that I'm married, maybe.
Yeah, maybe would have been a better answer, or to say like I wanted to feel like a united family or something. But really it was just, well, I've got it on now. I've had it on for 3 days. I'll just leave it on.
Yeah. No, I took to it like a duck to water. I really, really enjoy having it on. And I've had it on pretty much the whole time, apart from when I go to boxing classes that I've just started.
Oh, now that's a real man. That's not legs, bums and tums, is it?
But I was going to a gym in a very posh area with yummy mummies, they say, and just doing these boxing classes with them. So I felt very, what that would lead to. I felt very comfortable in that scenario. And then I've just moved to Tooting, and I've gone to a local boxing club, and I went on the wrong night, and it was a sparring night. And I ended up doing 12 rounds of sparring with these mental guys that really, really enjoy thumping everyone. And the next day I woke up really bruised all over my body.
Yeah, on the sparring thing, my friend told me he went to a boxing thing once. So for people that don't know sparring, it's you have to box and hit people, but it's not real fighting, is it?
Yeah, it's just touching up kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, but still punching.
Yes.
And he said that he was doing this with a woman, and he felt quite uncomfortable doing that, and the instructor was really trying to push him to punch the woman in the face. And he was like, I don't feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah, well, so one of those 12 people that I was partnered with, one of them was a woman, and she had a rather large chest area, and I didn't know, is that something that we can hit? Because it's quite a big part of just bodio. Like, if you're not doing head shots, where can I go?
I don't know what the rules are.
I didn't know
I go
either.
to legs, bums and tums. So what do I know? Although I do have some history boxing. When I was a very young child, from about 4 to 6, I went boxing. And I tell you, I saw a picture of me when I was about 5, and I was built like a brick shithouse. So that basically means I was extremely muscly. And I honestly think those muscles have remained the same since I was 5. That was the peak of my physical.
Are you saying the legs, bums and tums hasn't helped?
Only first day. But yeah, that was the peak that I hit when I was 5. I just peaked too soon. Yeah. But obviously when I was 5, going into school, I was getting all the girls. But things went downhill pretty quickly.
Wow. Yeah, muscular at 5. That's impressive.
So we are going to start with this podcast, okay? So let's jump into the pod. And so Charlie inspired me because for Charlie's podcast, we're going to record something about history. So I thought, right, okay, let's talk about history. And I thought we could go back through the ages, through the decades, and just talk about things that happened, important things, certainly in British history, okay, in these decades. So we're going to start from the 50s because the 40s, wasn't a great decade, I don't think, for anyone. So we're going to move into the 50s. And the first question is always, if you think of the 1950s, what do you think of?
What do I think of? Well, as you said, so the 40s, they've just finished World War II. So they're coming out of that. So baby boomers are starting to be born, I guess. And so women and men are fighting for what jobs they want, maybe? Because I remember that in our history classes, like they were saying that was the first time where women started to realise that it's actually probably quite fun to ride a tractor instead of just be in the home.
I forgot to mention at the beginning of this podcast that I actually don't really know anything about history. Okay, so I have done 5 minutes research, and I do have a few things on my list. That's not on the list, so I have no recollection of that. Okay, obviously it was a long time before I was born as well.
Right, but yeah, so I think women starting to get their own independence, and I think. Did the TV start? No, not TV. Colour TV. Was that in the 50s?
okay, I've done my research. Very late 50s, I think 59,
Right.
something like that. So I actually associated that with the 60s. Actually, oh no, sorry, I got my dates wrong. It was the end of the 60s, so it was the 70s where TV colour really came in. But the big event in Britain was the Queen's coronation in the 50s.
Okay.
Big, because her dad died apparently, so he must have died young, because I remember when her mum died and I was working at a supermarket in England when I was about 16, and I will never forget the supermarket. I said, like, see you tomorrow, like coming into work, and they said, no, tomorrow we're closed because the Queen's mum died. And I remember thinking, the Queen's got a mum, because even then I thought she was about 90, and I thought, well, why is she not the Queen? But I thought, right, well, brilliant. I've got a day off work and paid, so loving it.
Yeah, I did watch The Crown for the first couple of seasons. I would like to get back to that, actually, but I think I remember that. Yeah, I mean, I feel a bit ashamed that we both don't know the facts of this, but yeah, he died young. Yeah,
Really young. Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, obviously we've covered everything from the 50s there, so we've leave no stone unturned. So we're moving to the 60s. What do you think of?
Okay, 60s makes me think of only hippies. That's the only thing I think
of. Course. The swinging 60s, as they're known.
The flared trousers, were they then?
I associate that with 70s.
Yeah.
But again, don't listen to me. I'm an idiot.
Okay. No, yeah. Hippies. Yeah.
Definitely. And apparently the Summer of Love, I've heard a lot about this. Apparently that was in 67. I didn't do enough research to find out why it's called the Summer of Love.
Okay. I was going to ask that. And was it only one summer?
Well, apparently, yeah. It's the 1967 was the Summer of Love. So well, it must have been a great summer by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
But obviously you had the Beatles, the Rolling Stones coming out big, and another big thing, I'm sure you've heard about this, the Great Train Robbery in England. You heard about that? Yeah.
It's been a while since I've heard about that. I think it does ring a tiny, tiny bell, but I'd love to be reminded, if not told afresh.
So I do have a little bit more info on this than I do about the Summer of Love in 67. So a train was going, and obviously had lots of money on this train, and these people, I think there were like 10 of them, something like that, somehow managed to stop the train and steal £2.6 million in 1960 something. Now my first question is, what is a train doing with 2.6 million? Like, that's cash as well. Can you imagine taking that much cash?
Yeah, that's insane. But I mean, compared to nowadays, they did use cash a bit more.
Yeah, but I just can't imagine a train with 2.6 million and actually having enough people to take it. That's literally just throwing it in bags. That must have been absolutely mental.
2.6 million. Are you assuming it's all in pound coins? I think in £50 notes, it could be like, what, half a crate? No, but maybe even less. Maybe like 10 suitcases.
10 suitcases of £50 notes. Okay. But so that happened, yes, in the 60s, and then they actually got away with it at first.
Wow.
Which, that was obviously, they got caught, and there was some guy called Ronnie Biggs. He was quite famous.
Ronnie Biggs, again, a little bell has just gone off, but I can't say any more about him.
I remember this because when he died in 2013, apparently. So after he went to prison, he escaped and went to live most of his life in Brazil, came back in 2001. And I think I remember that as well. And because obviously people like crime stories, don't they? And he actually became like a bit of a hero for like this train robbery. And people didn't want him to go to prison, but they still sent him to prison.
Wow. Do you understand why the psychology of the general population, why they would not want him to go to prison?
No idea. But another thing in the 60s were the Cray twins. Heard of these?
No, I don't think so.
You not?
No.
Oh, I thought I was bad. So these were two twins that apparently ruled London in the 60s, kind of like gangsters. And again, became very famous and people actually started to like them, even though they'd actually killed people. Like, it's a very strange... And they've got loads of books, because I read a few of those books when I was young, because I thought I was a bit of a gangster.
Those muscles went to your head.
Yeah, I mean, except reading the books, maybe I was a gangster in my bedroom. I wasn't doing much else to show that I was a gangster.
Was there anything... Sorry to interrupt, but was there anything that could suggest that you thought you were a gangster outside of your bedroom?
Sometimes when I was 17, driving in my Vauxhall Corsa, I used to listen to Dr. Dre really loud.
Nice.
And move my head up and down.
Windows open?
Of course, yeah. Well, generally only when I was going fast, and then when you got in traffic and people could actually see you, then turn the music down.
Yes, respectful. A respectful gangster.
Yeah, that was me all over, a respectful gangster.
Nice.
But apparently as well, John Lennon got an MBE, which I don't really know what that... Member of the British Empire, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like a bit down from a sir. And he actually returned that to, I don't know, the Queen, in protest of the British government supporting the war in Vietnam. Now, if I thought John Lennon was a legend before, the fact that he has said no to that, I just love him even more, because I still say to this day, I mean, the chances are low that I'm going to get an MBE or be a sir.
It could happen. It could happen.
It could. But if it did, I would tell the king to shove it up his arse and turn it sideways.
Ooh.
I would refuse it. I would refuse it.
You'd refuse it on the day, or you'd refuse the build-up towards it? Would you want him to be in person and then be like, nah, go away?
I'm not that much of a gangster.
I'm a respectful gangster.
I think when they give you those things, they also have a sword, don't they? So I wouldn't want to say no to him if he's got a sword in his hand.
Yes, that's true. That's true, yeah.
So yeah, definitely before.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're on to the 70s.
Okay.
What do you think of?
70s. Oh, God. What do I think of with the 70s? So the hippie movement has just happened. Technology? Is there any advancement in technology in the 70s? I don't really...
Well, I think colour TV is the big one, because in the 60s was still generally black and white.
Right.
Noted by the fact when England won the World Cup in 66, black and white.
Yeah, right. What about disco? I think that was then.
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
Yeah?
Well, that obviously came, I think, from America, that Saturday Night Fever, and that's where I think the flares come in, so that's what I think as well. And the punk scene started with the Sex Pistols, who, again, were very much anti-establishment and very controversial, because apparently in the same year as the Queen's Jubilee, so she's already having a Jubilee in the 70s here, which is pretty crazy, they released a kind of anti-Queen song and did not go down very well at all. Anti
the Queen or anti the band Queen?
No, anti the Queen, Her Majesty.
Did Queen... Were Queen later? They were the 90s, weren't they?
80s, I believe.
80s.
Because in the 80s, the big thing was the concert, that Live Aid thing that they did at Wembley. So big in the 80s. And then the 70s finished with Margaret Thatcher taking over.
Okay. Yes. Gosh, how many years was she in power?
Until 1990.
Yeah.
A long time. And that's when, obviously, now we'll move straight into the 80s. Obviously, a great decade because I was born. Were you born in the 80s?
No, I was born in 4 months into the 90s.
See, I always had a rule. I am now starting to reconsider this rule, but that I couldn't be friends with anyone born in the 90s. My wife, luckily, just made it, because she was born in November 89.
Right.
So she
if
you whisker away.
Yeah, she was. If you were to come for dinner with us, maybe you could have a 3-way conversation with my partner, because she was similar. She was December 89, but I would be the April baby that is just blocked off. Maybe I could be your chauffeur.
Yeah. Because, well, in the 80s, it was all happening. So what do you think of when you think 80s?
space race. Space race?
Space race.
Yes, I think the space race happened then, didn't it? When did...
To land on the moon. That was the 60s,
that was the
I
60s,
believe.
wasn't it? But the NASA did some stuff in the 80s, I think.
Now, you will not find a better history podcast in the world. NASA did some stuff in the 80s, didn't they?
I think it was the space shuttle. So that was a big change for them to be able to reuse a vehicle.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind of the 80s is Ghostbusters, because that was massive. I actually remember queuing up at the cinema, waiting outside the cinema in the rain to go and watch Ghostbusters. So that must have been, I looked at it, Ghostbusters 2 came out in 89, where I was probably about 4.5, 5-ish. And so that is a memory I have. And just think about that, queuing up outside a cinema to watch a film because it was the day it was coming out. Like, when would that happen now?
Sorry, how old were you then?
Well, I was born in 84, but the end of 84. So unless it was November 89, so I would have been 5 maximum.
Right. Okay, so you were 5 and you were queuing up
to watch Ghostbusters.
That's an investment. It's impressive that you understood how much you wanted to watch it. But I guess at that age, people are really keen on things. Like my niece, she's really keen on, what is it, Elsa? Is that the one?
I'm
Frozen.
pretty good with this stuff now. Yeah, Frozen.
Yeah. She would probably queue up. Yeah.
I don't know if that happens. Things just felt bigger back then. And we'll come to this in a minute, but in the 90s, so films like Jurassic Park and Titanic just seemed mega. Now, it could be an age thing, but I just don't... When was the last film as big as that?
I think what you're confusing, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're confusing the big blockbuster movies being few and far between, and there's not much noise in between. Now we've got Netflix releasing huge films every other week, pretty much. So it's more regular. Don't you think that's the difference?
Well, maybe because of that regularity, it just doesn't feel so big.
Yeah.
Like, well, I mean, there are other ones. Like, if I think of films in the 90s, like Home Alone, Jurassic Park, Titanic, they just seemed massive, and like the build up to it just seemed huge, and like everyone seemed to be talking about it. Everyone would buy the video for Christmas. It just seemed massive. Whilst now I don't know. I don't know if it's an age thing or that I'm just out of touch.
No, I double down on my thought there, because they don't have enough time and space to talk about something so much, and everyone's got their niches now. Everyone's in their own little rabbit holes online, that they don't really have this communal spirit of building up to going to watch one particular thing. I think if we were to replay that whole thing, I don't know. Do you think as many people would be interested in Titanic when they've got all of these YouTube channels that they prefer to watch?
That is a very good point. I think you have hit the nail on the head with that one.
Yeah, I don't know.
Very good point.
Yeah, I enjoyed those moments. I think the first film that I saw was GoldenEye. James Bond GoldenEye in the cinema.
I think I've told you this before. I have actually never seen a James Bond film in my whole life.
Yes, you have, yes. And so since that conversation, you still haven't dared to?
Part of me doesn't want to now. Yeah. Like, maybe I do want to. I'll still say no, just because it's like a thing you can pull out at a party.
Yeah.
Almost. So a discussion point. And
just imagining like there's a lull in conversation, and then you're just like, so I've never seen a James Bond film. What? Oh, just wondering if you were wondering. Yeah, I've never seen one ever.
If there's an awkward silence and then I come out with, I've never seen a James Bond film, it's going to get people's emotions going. People will be angry. People will be surprised.
It does.
And things will start moving.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing to have.
It's true.